Hi, this is part 2 in my video series about knitting hats, and in this video I am going to show you how I do the stranded color work part. I'll show you how I begin and what I think about when I work the pattern, and I will also show you how I handle longer yarn floats whenever they may occur. So let's get started. And I'm ready to start knitting the pattern, the color work part of the pattern. So here I have my second yarn color. I have a habit of attaching it around my thumb like this so it will not slip when I start knitting with it. And now I will simply continue in stockinette, only I pick up the color I need to make my pattern. I usually hold my yarn like this, but I know that there are many ways of holding the yarn when you work with two colors, and people should use what they are most comfortable with. So now I can let this one go, because now my yarn is attached. I always make sure that I keep the same color in the same place throughout my project when I do color work. If I change these two, this will be visible in my pattern. So changing the colors here and there, changing where I hold the colors, will result in an uneven pattern. So I try to avoid that. So I will now continue to follow my pattern, and when I arrive at a place in the pattern where I have a little tip regarding the yarn floats on the wrong side, I will get back to you and show you how I solve it when I get longer yarn floats. And just generally, I sometimes try to stretch my work to see if it is elastic. If you are a tight knitter, you might have these yarn floats too tight, so it can't be stretched. So you should check that every now and then. And the opposite, if you knit very loosely, you should check every now and then that you don't get these loops on the wrong side. But if you do that, you should be okay, and I'll get back to you when I get to the long yarn floats to show you how I handle them. And I'll just continue to work my pattern, and then I'll get back to you. So I have started to knit the color work pattern, and I am now going to show you how I handle longer yarn floats. The yarn floats are these threads that go across on the wrong side when you do color work, and usually, at least my rule is that if I knit more than 5 stitches in the same color, I pick up the yarn float like this. You can see I have done it here so that it does not become too long. This is a hat, so here I have 7 stitches in the same color. I could probably get away with that in a hat because you don't risk pulling the yarn floats as much in a hat as you would in, say, the sleeve of a sweater. But this is my habit, just to secure the longer yarn floats, and I'm going to show you how I do. So now earlier I decided that I would have the white yarn closer to me and the gray yarn away from me, and I want to be consistent and not change that, because that would affect the appearance of my pattern. So, and I have 7 gray stitches here, and when I want to pick up the yarn floats during those 7 stitches, I start by just knitting normally until I am as close to halfway, or as close to 5 stitches as I can get. And then I pick up the stitch I want to knit, and instead of moving over the white yarn to pick up the gray as I normally do, I go under it like this, pick up the gray and knit. And now you can see I have attached the white yarn on the wrong side. So I'll just show you one more time that I pick up the stitch, I go under the white yarn, over the gray, pick up and knit. And now I have 2 options. I can continue to go over both yarns again. Then this will result in me picking up the yarn one more time, as you can see here. Or I can continue to go underneath the white, over the gray, like this. And the difference is one, that this will be a little bit looser. The other method that I just showed you would attach the yarn a little more firmly. But as you can see here, this part here will make the white yarn visible. And this will happen twice if I attach the yarn twice. So I try to keep this to a minimum, the number of times I attach the yarn. So that is why I usually continue for a few stitches before I attach again. And if I work a pattern where I need to pick up yarn floats all the time and in many consecutive rounds, I usually try to avoid picking up the yarn in the same place. So, because I don't want this on top like a ladder. In the next round I would pick up the yarn, for example, here or here. Because when I only have one place, one stitch where this shows through, when I work my next round and knit normally over these stitches, I will close this and it will not be as visible. But if I pick up the yarn float in the same place for many rounds, it will be more difficult to hide it. So this is how I do, and I am going to show you as well what I would do if I had decided to keep the gray yarn closest to me and white yarn away from me. Then I would do as I did before. I would knit a few stitches, and now I want to pick up the yarn float. I cannot do it the same way because I would like to knit with this yarn. What I do is that I pick up the yarn, go under both yarns, around the gray one to pick it up, under the white yarn again, and I knit. And now you can see I have attached the yarn float. I'll show you one more time. Pick up the stitch, I go over both yarns, under both yarns, up again, pick up the gray, and down between. And I knit. I have to pull on this a little bit. Okay. And now I have the same option as I had here. I could go back to working normally again, and that would attach the yarn float one more time, which is fine if you have one round of attaching yarn floats and then nothing in the next, no problem. But usually I prefer to keep the number of yarn float pickups to a minimum, so I will continue for a few stitches and work in the same way. And now it is time for a white stitch again, and there I have one yarn float pickup. So I'll have to do this again with my yarns placed in the right order. Like this. So this is how I handle the long yarn floats when I need to. And now I am going to continue to work my pattern, and I will get back to you when it is time to start decreases.